but I've been in Australia as a senior HSEQ auditor for more than 20 years. So how are we going to run this presentation? Well, it's only 9 slides, but those slides cover quite a lot. And just to reiterate what Tusha said, if you have come here with any questions, please hold off on those questions to the end of the presentation, and we will certainly ensure that we answer those. And if we can't answer them at that time, we'll certainly get back to you afterwards. I'm going to present some of the middle slides, but I'm going to hand back to Tusha to do the first 3 slides.
Just in terms of the objectives of this today's webinar, the main objectives are we want to go through and understand why we implement ISO 9001-2015. We'd like to cover some of the summary of the main elements of ISO 9001-2015. We want to cover and discuss and give you guys an understanding of what are the steps for ISO 9001-2015 certification. What are some of the tips, problems, and pitfalls that you will face in your certification journey? We'd like to then sort of, explain a little bit about sustainable certification and what we offer in the certification pathway. Finally, we'll go through a bit of further information and finish off with a bit of time for questions and answers. Now, in terms of the implementation of ISO 9001-2015, at some point, the biggest questions that sort of come to mind is why go through this ISO 9001-2015 certification process. Firstly, we know that it's internationally recognized. Statistically speaking, ISO 9001 is still the most popular standard in the whole world, and it provides a competitive advantage in today's challenging marketplace. You would have seen how some of the key aspects of certification at 9001 is all about continuous improvement. And in this business climate today, post-COVID, how we strive for continual improvement can be best measured through ISO 9001 certification. Standardization. One of the key benefits of the whole 9001 is it helps standardize your process. And whether you're coming from a manufacturing background, construction, engineering, climate, we aim to strive to have a very standardized process and consistency across the board. And this will help reduce our errors and our cost. We talk about continuous improvement. Part of the whole concept of ISO 9001 is about continuous improvement culture, including the use of systematic processes when problems occur, which will result in some of those efficiencies and cost savings. New tender and work opportunities. Why part of the reasons we go into and strive for ISO 9001 is to help and create more business opportunities for us as an organization. And this allows you to go for higher government contracts and also expand your business. I'll just hand it over to Guy.
All right, if we can get the presentation on the screen, I think that would be helpful. All right, so let's do a summary of the main elements of 9001-2015. So firstly, just to state that what many people don't realize is that the quality system is really your business management system. So a company that's operating in a professional way will likely already be covering off most of the 9001 requirements. And it's just a matter of filling in the gaps that remain. Some of these gaps can include business planning. Sometimes the knowledge of the way forward a company is going to take is in the head of the CEO. Sometimes it is formalized, such as pillars, strategy, vision, mission statement, SWOT, or PEST, with actions devolved to departments. It is along the lines of the latter approach that 9001 requires. Interested parties is another new clause of the 9001-2015 standards. Do you know what your interested parties' requirements are. Do you take actions to satisfy these requirements? There's a lot of interested parties in your management system, but the most important ones are usually the customers and the employees. A quality policy is a brief statement, ideally one page, that aligns the processes and purpose and strategic direction of your company and lays a framework for quality objectives. It serves as the top-level quality directive to leadership as they guide the company forward. SMART. So SMART for objectives, targets, and programs means specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So those are KPIs, which again, you should already have in your system. Internal audits is a requirement of all the ISO standards. We audit you against the standards. You should audit against your management system. If there are findings from those audits or otherwise in your system, whether in relation to internal or external issues, including customer complaints, those should be filled in on a corrective action, which should be a formalized process. The management review is a meeting that takes place somewhere between once a month and once a year, which reviews the items above. All right, let's go to the next slide. And if we can just go into full screen, just at the bottom there. Just a bit to the left, just with the, okay. So steps for obtaining certification. Well, firstly, you should read the 9001 standards. It's amazing how many quality managers and officers haven't actually read the standards. If you have trouble sleeping at night, I would recommend you turn on the bedside lamp and start reading the standards. And I can assure you, you'll be asleep in no time. Perform a gap analysis. So sustainable certification has a checklist approach in terms of that gap analysis, which just highlights any issues that need to be fixed of those gaps between your current system and the requirements of ISO 9001-2015. Develop an implementation plan, a team approach. Well, one of the traps that you can fall into is having that your 9001 system is owned by one person, often your quality manager. It needs to be a team approach, both in terms of owning the system and in terms of implementing the system. Training. So it's always helpful to have internal auditor training as well as employee awareness training as to the requirements of 9001-2015. Documentation. Well, there's been various iterations of the 9001 standards. There was once a requirement for 20 documented procedures. Under the 9001-2000 version, there were 6 mandatory procedures. It is now more about what you require. Don't over-document your system. Right-size it. If you're not sure if you need a documented instruction, then you probably don't need it. Ensure your instructions are 100% accurate, because if they're not 100% accurate, then no one will read them because they don't know what they can trust to be accurate and what they can't. In terms of implementation, you need to roll out any additional requirements and have a plan for that process. The internal audits will fix any issues that you might have, and particularly in terms of a gap analysis to the 9001 standards initially, and then later on it will be to your own internal system, which would have been certified. Prepare for the audit. There's various stages in the audit process, which Tusha can certainly inform you about if you require. And at the end of the day, it's about continually improving your QMS. The process of plan, do, check, act, particularly the process of fixing corrective actions, ensures continual improvement. All right, let's go to the next page, please. Tips, problems, and pitfalls. All right, let's have a little bit of a discussion about that. So what are the problems that can occur in terms of implementation? Well, if everyone is so busy with their current role that they don't have time to help implement, then that can be a resource issue. Top management commitment. If top management are not committed and completely on board, you will have difficulty implementing requirements. And the reason for that is that people won't make time for you. Lack of understanding of the standards requirements. The standards can be difficult to interpret. A training course to understand its requirements can be beneficial. Additional tips. Well, one of the things you can do is, if you're unsure of a requirement, you can implement it as best you can and utilize the auditor at stage 1, which is a preliminary audit, to explain the requirement to you and alternatives you might consider. Other things that you should be aware of. But there's no set way of complying with 9001/2015, and a good auditor will be able to interpret your management system in relation to its requirements. And secondly, sometimes clients think that the auditor is out there to fail you, but they should work with you on the journey towards continual improvement. All right, I'm going to hand over to Tusha for the next slide.
So just to sort of recap, why sustainable certification? So 3 key pillars that we have built our organization on is our auditors. We have sort of trained our auditors and really built a commitment that our auditors are here to dedicate their time and to understand your business, really understand some of the core issues that you're facing within your organization in line with your organizational objectives, and help you achieve some of those desired goals through process improvement. Our auditors are really famed on making sure they spend their time during the opening meeting to put you at ease of some of the difficulties and complexities you may be facing. And right throughout the audit process, we have had many sort of feedback from our customers about our auditors, making sure that who have committed and ensure that they have delivered above and beyond sort of value. So we're all about making sure that our auditors deliver a value-based audit. Our transparency. We really have prided ourselves with all our stakeholders and our customers at the forefront of making sure we have a very transparent model of really nurturing the customer right throughout the journey, from when they first accept the quotation right through to the very end of post audit, and having those discussions and honest discussions about how they found the audit process and looking for ways to improve upon their service. And then our customer service delivery, as I mentioned before, we really tailor a customer first approach and a commitment towards really driving outcomes and good outcomes for our customers. Now, this pretty much comes to the conclusion of our webinar. I do have put some more information here. So if there is any sort of queries that we aren't able to kind of address by the end of the question and answers at the end of this, here is the email address and website link to contact us on. www.sustainablecertification.com.au/contact us, or email us at co@sustainablecertification.com.au. So that pretty much concludes our webinar. We now sort of will have a bit of a period of time for questions. So I might stop sharing my screen and really allow for some questions.
All right, thank you for that, Tusha. So if there are any questions to do with the audit itself or to do with the standards, I'll certainly answer that. And if there are any questions that you have about the certification process, Tusha will answer that. So we'll open ourselves to the floor. Has anyone come with any questions today that they want to get answered? I'm hoping that the mics are on, etc. Anything at all, whether in regards to the presentation or any other questions that you've come here today that you specifically want answered, or to do with the certification process? I'm hoping everyone's mics are working, etc.
Hi, my name is Arvind. I work for Schneider Electric, and first of all,
I might have audited you. That's one of my clients.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Is it Notting Hill, is it?
Sorry?
Are you in Notting? Is it Notting Hill?
No, so we've got a couple of offices. We've got one in Sydney where we've got our new head office, and we've got one in Notting Hill. But yeah, so we've got a couple of branches across Australia. But I think, first of all, thanks for taking your time out, guys, Tushar and I. Really appreciate it. I'm quite new to standards. I come from an electrical engineering / product management background. So for me, it's more along the lines of understanding the certification and why do companies actually need these kind of certifications, number one. And number two is, what's the value proposition that from a sustainable certification point of view that companies should go with that? I did see the 3 pillars that Tushar beautifully explained, but just as a more overall general view, because I don't think anyone else is asking the question, so I thought I might as well ask to get things moving.
Well,
Go on.
I'm happy to take that. I mean, I guess the key value proposition that we really, I guess, really pride ourselves on is making sure that we deliver above and beyond, and ensure that we understand and deliver care throughout the audit process, and deliver integrity throughout the audit process.
Let me answer a little bit further in regards to that. Why do companies get certified is a very good question. And I know Schneider Electric is certified. I think, part of it is to do with tenders as much as anything. If you're going to be submitting tenders, if you're certified, sometimes you can require to be certified to actually submit those tenders. And sometimes you can submit those tenders if you're not certified, but then you have to demonstrate that you have most of the compliance for those requirements in terms of the standards anyway. So then companies where you're making out a lot of tenders, it can just make the process a bit shorter in regards to that whole tendering process where you need to submit all this documentation, etc., in relation to it. So I think that's one reason why companies get certified. It's a good marketing tool when you can say that you're certified. It gives clients a confidence in your system to know that you're meeting at least minimum standards in regards to that system. So I think that those are a couple of elements. Sometimes, and 9001 isn't the only standard, so there are other standards to do with OHS and EMS as well. I know for EMS, in terms of companies that I've certified, that a lot of the requirements for that come from head office. So they will require all their subdivisions to have certification to 14001. And one of the requirements in relation to that is because they save money. They save money through a focus on objectives and targets in terms of reducing your footprint and resource use. In terms of the OH&S standard, then certainly it's a lot to do with the health and safety and well-being of personnel, having risk management systems, trying to get down the number of LTIs and MTIs that you have in your system, and it imposes a discipline in relation to doing that. So those are just a couple of the reasons that companies do get certified.
Thank you for that question, Arvind. Sanjeet, I just saw that you've written in the chat. Well, usually the time period required to complete a 9001 audit, we sort of tailor it according to the customer readiness. So it could be anywhere between, a 1 week 2 week turnaround. Obviously, there are 2 components to the audit process from an auditor perspective, and that is you have your stage 1, which is your formal document review, and that is to ensure that the documentation is completed and meets the requirements from a standard point of view. And then you have stage 2, which is about the certification audit pathway, which is about making sure that the systems in place are implemented in line with the requirements. So the turnaround time can be anywhere between 2 weeks to 1 month or 2 months, depending on how ready you are for the audit process.
Are there any more questions? Anyone come today with a particular question? It can be about, as specifics to do with some of the requirements that we spoke about in terms of the steps for certification, in terms of summary of some of the main elements of 9001. Any questions you have, we'd be perfectly fine. All right, I think if there's no further questions, certainly just be aware of the fact that that if there is any questions you have about the certification process, and if you're looking at getting certification, you will be given this presentation, so you can certainly contact Sustainable Certification in relation to that, and we can certainly set you on the pathway in terms of obtaining certification.
Well, thanks, Guy. I might just do a bit of a closeout. If there's no more questions for the moment, please feel free to contact us if there are any questions after this. Obviously, thanks again, Guy, for sharing really a lot of invaluable information with us today. I'd like to extend a big thank you to all of you. As I mentioned at the start, we will be sending in an email in the coming days with all the resources that we mentioned today. We would love it if you could please help us by completing a survey, which we're going to send, that is sent to you with the slides, and provide us with any feedback that you may have. Again, I would like to thank you personally, Guy, again, for being so generous with your time. My name is Tusha Nathan, and it's been an absolute pleasure hosting our webinar for all of you, and all the best, and until next time.
All right, we'll let you go. Thank you again, and thank you, Tusha. That was excellent. And thank you, Aaron.
Thank you.